In this video, we'll explore the Stencil Theme Editor. The two main files we'll work with are config.json, which we've seen in earlier videos, and schema.json. Schema.json declares which theme settings are editable in the theme editor, while config.json assigns and updates a default value for each of these editable settings. First, you'll want to have your theme up in your IDE of choice, as well as the local storefront. To launch your theme in Theme Editor view, use the command stencil start-e. To pull up the storefront, you'll want to go to localhost 8181 instead of localhost 3000. Let's look at the structure of the Theme Editor menu on the local storefront. The Styles section always appears at the top. Style variations are defined in the config.json file. The order they appear in within the config file determines the display order in the rendered theme editor. Below that, we have a number of expandable subsections. Each subsection and setting within the subsection is defined in schema.json. The subsection and setting names are arbitrary, and the order they appear in within schema.json determines their order here. 5 data types are supported by the theme editor: color, font, select, checkbox, and imageDimension. First, let's look at color. You may recall in a previous video that I created a key value pair in config.json to change the color of the theme credit information in the footer. Here is the key value pair. And if I swap to the footer.scss file, I could see the custom sass function here, which reads this key name, then pulls in the hex color value specified in config.json, returning this hot pink color, which we see in the footer. Since I've created a key for this in config.json, I can now add it as an editable option within the theme editor. In schema.json, I'll scroll to the bottom of the file where there is already a section for footer settings. The name label is what creates this footer section in the theme editor UI. I'll add a new color object to this section for my footer credit text color. For type, I'll use color. This will render a box for users to type hex values into, as well as a color picker. The label is what we want the display name to be. I'll use theme credit text color. The ID must match the key name existing in config.json. In this case, color-powered by. Now, I'll pull the local store back up, and we can see the new setting in the footer section. Within sections, headings can be added to create subcategories, which can make a section easier to navigate. I'll add some headings to the footer section to separate the color options from the toggle options. Swapping back to schema.json, I'll add 2 new objects to create headings. The first, I'll add right above my 2 color options. We're going to use a type statement like we did when creating the color option, but this won't reference one of the 5 data types that the theme editor supports. Instead, I want to use heading as the value. This declares a display caption in the theme editor UI. Then, I want to add a line for content. This is where I add the display text for this heading. I'll use colors. Now, I'll do the same thing right above the 2 toggle options. The type will again be heading, and I'll set the content to toggles. Refreshing the local storefront, the footer section is now showing these subcategory headings. Next, we'll look at the font data type. In a previous video, I added a few fonts to my theme, a couple of Google fonts, and 1 custom font that was added in the Assets Fonts directory. I can use these fonts in schema.json to provide font choices in the theme editor, and even add Google font options that were not listed as defaults in config.json. Here, for example, are the font selection options for headings within the store. You'll see here the data type is font. The label is font family. That's the display name that appears over the render drop-down list in the theme editor UI. The ID is the key name that appears within config.json. In this case, it's headings-font. The Options section is where you define which font options are selectable. Each font option listed has a group, label, and value. The group designation is not necessary, and you can omit it. However, the group provides a subheading in the drop-down menu that allows you to categorize similar fonts together. For example, Open Sans Bold, Open Sans Light, and Open Sans Regular Italic could all be added as options, and they could share the group heading Open Sans. The label is the name of the font as it will appear in the drop-down list. The value is the font family name. As with setting a font in the config.json file, calling in a Google font here, you should name it Google _ and then the name of your selected Google font. In a previous video, I'd set Chewy as the font to use for my headings. Under the existing font options, I'll add the following. I'll add another Google font, one that's not referenced in config.json. Below my entry for Chewy, I'll add a new option for the font named Lobster. Again, on the value, I'll use Google _ at the beginning, and then Lobster, the name of this particular Google font. After refreshing the store, I can see the new font options for my headings, and I could swap between Chewy and Lobster and the other fonts that were also added to the theme by default. The custom non-Google font that I added to the theme for my logo can also be made an option in the theme editor. Here in the logo section, I'll add a new option for Fancy Font. It will look much the same as when I added the Google font options, but the value area will not have the Google _ at the beginning of the font name value. When adding a non-Google font, though, there is an extra step you need to take. If we scroll up a little, we can see where the data type, label, ID, and options are designated for this logo font selection. In this section, we'll also need to add the following. If we swap back to the local store and select the new Fancy Font, there's a refresh prompt within the theme editor preview. If we click on this, the font is correctly applied. When using a non-Google font, you must specify this force reload, or else the preview will not properly update. Similar to the font type, select types generate a drop-down list. These select types can be used for a wide variety of theme customizations. For example, the font size options that appear in the typography section are created with the select data type. I'm going to create a new option to change my button shapes. The default I see when looking at the carousel call to action is a squared looking button. I'll want to add more rounded and leaf-shaped options. I'll start by creating a key in config.json. Under the main settings area, we've got a section defining button colors. I'll add my new key in this area just to keep like settings together. I'll name the key button-shape and assign it an arbitrary value of square. Next, I'll create my select option in schema.json. Within the theme editor, there's already a section devoted to buttons, so we'll add the new option at the top of this list. I'll create a new section with the data type select. My label will be button shape, and the ID will be button-shape to match what I created in config.json. Then the last section, options, is where I define my values that show up in the dropdown. For the first one, my label will be squared, and the value I'll also set to squared. This is the default for how buttons are already styled. The next, I'll label rounded and put rounded as the value. And the last will be a label of leaf with a value of leaf. Next, I need to define in my CSS what these values actually mean for my buttons. The file that controls the button styling in Cornerstone is assets, SCSS, components, foundation, buttons, buttons.scss. So I'll get that file opened up. At the top of this file, I'll add the following. This creates a mapping where the button shape variable will pull in as a text string whatever value is currently set for the button-shape key. Next, I'll add my additional styling under the button element. I'll use an if directive against the button shape variable mapping above to adjust the styling based on the selection from the theme editor. If the button shape variable pulls in the string rounded, it'll add this border radius of 25 pixels. If the button shape variable pulls in the leaf string, then the border radius will apply this 15 and 50 pixel styling to give us the leaf shape. Now, let's swap to the storefront and check out the new button shape option. Swapping between my selections, I can see the button shape changing in the preview. Next, we'll add a checkbox type. This enables toggling of a Boolean property, or an on-off button. In my local storefront, I can see that both category pages and web content pages show up in my top navigation. Some merchants may not want the content pages to show up in the nav, so I'll create a toggle to turn that part of the menu on and off. First, I'll create a key in config.json. I'll make it in this section here where the toggles for credit card logos and Quick View live. I'll give this key the name Show Pages Menu and set the value to true, so that by default the menu will show up in the navigation. Now, I'll create the checkbox option in schema.json. Within the theme editor, there's a section for header settings, so I'll add it at the top of this section. My type will be checkbox. The label will be Show Page Menu in header. And then the ID will be Show Pages Menu for the key that was created in config.json. We don't need to create any options or values, as this checkbox type will populate a checkbox in the storefront, which will pass back a true or false value depending on whether it is checked or unchecked. Now, I need to tie this true-false toggle to the page menu. I'm going to open up Components, Common, Navigation-Menu.html. Here toward the top, we can see where it creates a list item in the navigation for each top-level category. Right under that, it creates a list item for each top-level web page. I'm going to add an if helper around this web page section. Let's look at the local store and test the new toggle. Now, if the Show Pages Menu toggle returns true, it will render the page section of the menu. If it returns false, it will not render the web page menu, leaving just the categories in the top navigation. The last type we'll look at is the imageDimension data type. This lets a user specify dimensions for images used around the store, like product images or the store's logo. The config.json default value for an imageDimension type is a string. It can be either original or a horizontal by vertical dimensions in the format number x number. In this example, we'll add the option for users to specify the size of swatches that show up on a product page. Many merchants use swatches to show images of a font for engraving or other uses where a small 20 by 20 image just doesn't work. We'll start by creating a key in config.json. I'll add the key here for swatch_size in the area where the other imageDimension keys are and give it the current theme default value of 22x22. Now, I'll create the imageDimension options in schema.json. There's a section here for product configuration, which already has imageDimension types to resize product images. I'll go ahead and add my new option for swatches in this section. For my data type on this one, I'll use imageDimension. The label will be swatch size, and the ID is swatch_size to match the key I created in config.json. This is another theme editor option to which I need to add force reload. Finally, we'll add our options. The options will have the first label as standard with a value of 22x22, which is what the theme has as a default. The second option will have a label of specify dimensions with a value of custom. This custom value will render text input fields for a user to specify their pixel dimensions. If we swap over to the local store, we can now see the edit option within the theme editor, but it doesn't do anything yet. We now need to get the custom inputs to change the swatch sizes. There are two types of swatches that can be used on a store: a color box generated using a color picker, or a user can also upload an image. We'll start with the uploaded image. In the Components, Products, Options directory is this file, swatch.html. You'll see two classes here for the swatches: form-option-variant-color and form-option-variant-pattern. The pattern one is the uploaded image type. We can see that the getImage helper is being used, and the image it pulls in is being sized by thumb_size. Here, we need to swap out thumb_size with swatch_size. If we swap to the local store and try to adjust the dimensions on the swatch, we can see that it doesn't actually update yet. In one of the SCSS files, the swatch size is being limited by this square mixin. We'll need to override this to get our custom dimensions working. I'll create a new partial SAS file to keep this separate and easy to find. Under Assets, SCSS, Layouts, Products, I'll add a new file, _productswatch.scss. Remember, imageDimension comes in as a string with the format number x number. So we need to convert this string somehow and pull out those width and height values. I'll start by creating an arbitrarily named variable, value of swatch size. Then I'll use the custom SAS function stencil string to pull in the swatch_size value specified in the theme editor. Now, we'll need to use some string functions to split this string up into usable parts to style things correctly. The constant in any imageDimension string will be the x, separating the width from the height. I'll create a variable position of x and use the string function stringIndex, which will allow me to find the first occurrence of a substring. We'll be using the variable value of swatch size as the string we're searching, and x as the value of the substring we want to find. Now that we have a variable that can find where the x is for a given value of swatch size, we can use the string slice function to extract the width and height as substrings. I'll make a variable for width and extract everything from the start of our value of swatch size string, with the starting position of 0, to the last character before the x in the string, position of x minus 1. I'll then make a height variable and extract everything after the x from the value of swatch size string, so position of x plus 1. I don't need to specify an endpoint for this, as it will automatically go to the last character of the string if it isn't otherwise specified. Now, we can assign these substring values as a width and height for our swatch boxes. We want to make sure to include both swatch classes for color and pattern. This will take care of resizing the color picker box, as well as resizing the box that was constraining the uploaded image swatch. The last thing we'll want to do is import this new partial. So we'll go up a level in our SCSS directory to the _layouts.scss file. We'll add @import products/product swatch to pull in our new CSS. Now, if we visit the local storefront and change our swatch dimension, it works. To recap, we covered accessing the local version of your theme's theme editor. We also covered the available data types to use when creating customization options within the theme editor. As always, you can find documentation on this and other features at stencil.bigcommerce.com/docs. In the next video, we'll cover using the Edit Theme Files feature to access and edit theme code from within the store's control panel.